Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. On behalf of the World Customs Organization, East and Southern African Regional Private Sector Group, we are honored to host this webinar on the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the AfCFTA. Do not be alarmed, this is not the start of the webinar. We have about 5 minutes before we officially kick off. Nevertheless, as we wait for more guests to join us, I would like to share some facts on the AfCFTA with you, which you can see on your screen now. Currently, only about 14% of trade in Africa takes place between African countries, and the AfCFTA will hopefully counter this, as the AfCFTA is projected to boost intra-African trade up to 52%. Africa is home to more than 1.2 billion people, with a combined GDP of roughly $2.55 trillion US, which is roughly the same as France. However, the AfCFTA is hopeful of expanding the size of Africa's economy more than tenfold by 2050 to around $30 trillion US, according to some estimates. Therefore, in summary, the AfCFTA hopes to increase real wages across the board, promote export diversification, achieve durable, sustained growth, enlarge the regional market, better attract FDI, increase industrialization, and accelerate structural transformation. As communicated throughout the week, we are honored to host the AfCFTA Secretariat in providing our opening address. We are further honored to host all the regional economic communities active in our continent on this webinar, which we indeed believe is a first. As we welcome more guests to this webinar, it's worth pointing out that the webinar will be recorded and made available on our website in due course, so be sure to have a look, as well as the other resources available. Together, we can achieve great things for our region and indeed the African continent. There's about 2 minutes to go before we officially start. So the next voice you will hear will be that of Dr. Juanita Maree, who will chair this webinar for us. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, colleagues. We're on the dot, so it's about 2 o'clock our South African time, and your time, it's a bit later, but from our point of view, it's lovely to have you all here. We think the program will enrich your understanding of the AfCFTA and with a good outcome of this agreement. Personally, we believe that it's Africa time, it's Africa's solution, and more importantly, we want to make sure that we can work in coordination together with a strong cohesion factor. Now, the panelist that's been selected has a profound meaning far beyond the AfCFTA, and allow me to share the meaning of their names. Demitta, Earth Mother; Dhunraj, King of Wealth; Alice, Noble, Exalted; Balness, Absolute Truth; Stephen, the Crown, and he will talk about the trade facilitation and the implementation. Then Maggie, in our region, Pearl, gift of God. Alcides, the strength, and that comes how will the future flow look in the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. Then Larry, which is the ROCB capacity building in Kenya, Lord of Kings, and then myself, God is gracious. So I think we will really enlighten your expertise and your expectations in the next 90 minutes. And we welcome you, and it is an honor to have you in this virtual presence. So with that, I will hand over to Demitta. Thank you, Demitta.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really happy and glad to be here. And let me thank the WCO ESA RPSG for inviting the Secretariat to this meeting. First, for organizing the webinar, and then for inviting the Secretariat to this all-important webinar. Let me say that such engagement with the private sector is at the heart of the Secretary General's vision for the AfCFTA. And in that regard, the Secretary General has taken time to engage extensively within the continent with private sector organizations, with business communities, within state parties. He has really deep dived with a lot of private sector organizations towards the achievement of the objectives and the goals of the AfCFTA. And we can't do that without informed stakeholders. We can't achieve what we set out to achieve if our stakeholders are not updated and informed at all the time on what the Secretariat is doing, on the status of the implementation of the AfCFTA agreement itself. And so having just said that, let me just go straight ahead and tell you where we are in terms of implementation of the AfCFTA. First, we have an expanded mandate from what it was when the negotiations were concluded in March 21, 2019, when it was signed. We have an expanded mandate. And then that mandate has been expanded to include digital trade and a protocol for women and youth. And this also emphasizes the fact that the heads of state and government understand the role women play in terms of trade. Besides the expanded agenda, we have achieved up to 80% in terms of trading goods negotiations. If you recall, when the agreement was signed, we had a built-in agenda under the protocol on trading goods, and so far we are about 80% complete. And when I say that, what it means is that we have about 41 countries that have deposited their schedules of tariff concessions / offers. You might want to note that it's also in groups. So you have the customs unions submitting, like ECOWAS submitting an ECOWAS schedule, CIMAC, EAC, SACU, and then you have other individual countries, state parties that countries that have submitted their schedules / offers. Regarding another critical thing that every stakeholder needs to know is the rules of origin. The rules of origin where we are now is 86% complete. It's up from the 81% complete where it was when the heads of state and government met in December. So we've finalized the additional 5% of the tariff lines to bring it up to 86%. And we have a deadline to complete the rules of origin by the end of June 2021. And the Secretariat working alongside with the member states is looking forward to meeting that deadline. In terms of the Secretariat itself, the Secretariat is fully operational, and Being operational, it means that even the institutions of the Secretariat have been fully operationalized. So in that regard, we have held several meetings of the Council of Ministers responsible for trade. We've held about 5 actually, and the Committee on Trade in Goods just finished its 6th meeting just last week, and then we have had several meetings of the Committee on Trade in Services. Trade in Services is not as complete as the trade in goods, because we still have to negotiate a regulatory framework and then finalize on the specific commitments, given the hybrid approach that we have to the negotiations of trade and services. The subcommittees on the trading goods, they've been operationalized too, and they've had their meetings. And why I'm saying this in an excited way is because these subcommittees would see, and the committees that have, they will see to the implementation of the agreement. The policy aspect of the agreement is done, the rules are there, but now they need to be implemented. They actually need to be fully operationalized. And in that regard, you know, the Secretariat saw it fit to bring together Director Generals of Custom to discuss issues that pertain to customs within the agreement. That will be trade facilitation, customs cooperation, and transit. And this is key, because now that we are almost there, customs is very critical. Very critical in the sense that the agreement will be majorly implemented by customs. And so we've had 2 meetings of the Director Generals of Customs towards fully operationalizing the annexes that have to do with customs. Immediately with customs, because if you look at it, almost 80% of the annexes actually would have to be implemented by customs one way or the other. And in a snapshot, that's where we are at the Secretariat, and we are still counting. We are hoping that by the time we have a summit in July, we would have delivered on the summit's mandate to the Secretariat in terms of where they want us to be regarding implementation. I see you looking at me. Have I overshot my time?
No, it's a pleasure listening to you, Demitta. And as I said, your name is Earth Mother, so I think you're at the right position at the right place. And thank you very much. And we're really honored to have you in this gathering with us. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Then I'm going to hand over to Dhunraj, and I don't pronounce it correctly, so you are more than welcome, my friend, to pronounce your name. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Juanita. The Germans call it Dhunraj. Some people call it Dhunraj. Some people call it Dhunraj. So it's okay the way you take it. I see that with the names, we have got mothers, we have got a king of wealth, kings of kings, and pearl of the Southern Africa. I didn't know that Maggie is our pearl of Southern Africa. I knew about Alcides being the strong man working with him for more than 10 years. In terms of myself, maybe I'm king of wealth, but only on paper. Not practical, on practical terms, maybe looking forward, and then God will bless you, Juanita, if really I become king of wealth. Thank you very much. Yeah, so Dr. Juanita Maree, Mr. Larry Lisa, Director of the WCO RPSG, representative from the AfCFTA Secretariat, Madam Demitta, a representative from REX, and also SACU, representatives from the private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kassee Dhunraj from the African Union Commission, Department of Economic Development, Trade, Industry, and Mining. On the onset, let me also thank the organizers, especially Dr. Juanita, for inviting the African Union Commission. It is not the first time we have collaborated together, and it will also not be the last time. I also want to take the opportunity to thank and congratulate Dr. Juanita for the remarkable job she's doing. She has been doing since a number of years in the area of trade facilitation and customs modernization. Ladies and gentlemen, my expose will be on, as mentioned in the program, will be on trade facilitation under African Union. And basically, I will be focusing a little bit on trade facilitation initiatives under the AfCFTA, but also under the BIAT program, the Boosting Intra-African Trade. Just give me a little bit of time to share screen my presentation. I hope I will manage to do it. Yeah. Juanita, just
yes, Kassee, it's coming through. Yes, it's coming through.
Okay.
We can see that you're busy sharing. Thank you. Yes, we can see that. You maybe just can do in presentation mode on your computer.
Yes, I will put it on slideshow.
Yes, perfect. We can see that. It's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. All right, as mentioned, my presentation will be on trade facilitation in the African Union. And like I mentioned, I will be basically focusing a little bit on AfCFTA, definitely not repeating what Madam Demitta has already mentioned. And we are also very glad that now we have definitely a representative from the AfCFTA Secretariat, and we can learn and hear more from them. But given that the African Union Commission had already started the process at some point in time, so it will be a pleasure for me to also share with you what we have been doing on trade facilitation under the African Union Commission and also relating to the AfCFTA, and I will touch on boosting intra-African trade. Trade facilitation under African Union, maybe we can trace it already in the 1990s, where we noticed a different focus from the heads of state, AU heads of state, that is the need to foster regional economic integration. With the Abuja Treaty, the African Union embarked in the landmark project of the African Economic Community. We all know about it, with clear milestones. If you go through the Abuja Treaty, it clearly states the different milestones, including, for instance, free trade area, common market, etc., etc. But the treaty had already also laid solid foundation for trade facilitation. It stated inter alia liberalization of trade. How? Through abolition of customs duties and non-tariff barriers. So already in 1990s, we already heard about the elimination or abolition of non-tariff barriers, which is already something very praiseworthy. It is not something that came in the recent years. Harmonization of national policies in different areas, adoption of a customs common external tariff, that was already something which was in the Abuja Treaty. Simplification and harmonization of trade documentation. This is something which is still very common in terms of different international instruments and requirements. If you go through the SADC protocol on trade, it also talks about simplification and harmonization of trade documentation. So this is a very important requirements under trade facilitation. It also mentions about customs cooperation and administration. So suffice to say that the Abuja Treaty already embarked in a number of trade facilitation initiatives that was required by the AU heads of the states for member states to implement. Then in 2012, the heads of the state also embarked into two major projects, that is the AfCFTA and boosting intra-African trade. And with the Agenda 2063, we also have a number of flagship projects, including the AfCFTA, but then also other trade facilitation projects, related projects, for instance, the development of the commodities strategy, the high-speed network for Africa, single Africa air traffic. So these are some of the key flagship projects, which is already mentioned in the Agenda 2063, and definitely the AfCFTA, which Madam Demitta has already referred to. When we come to the AfCFTA agreement, when we go through the agreement, we will find a number of annexes We already got some update with the previous speaker on tariff liberalization and the status on rules of origin. The agreement also has dedicated annexes on customs cooperation and mutual administrative assistance. One annex on trade facilitation, which has been mainly taken from the trade facilitation agreement, but it definitely goes beyond TFA. Then one annex on non-tariff barriers, because normally when we see in any free trade areas, when there is the elimination of customs duties, there is a proliferation of non-tariff barriers, as we have experienced in a number of RECs. So there is a full annex on non-tariff barriers, including how to deal with them and the different mechanisms to ensure elimination of non-tariff barriers. Then you will also find that this agreement has a dedicated annex on transit. Why a dedicated annex? Because transit in Africa is very, very critical for the movement of goods. And we also acknowledge that quite a number of countries are still landlocked. And that is why taking into consideration and the different challenges that we already experience in terms of transit, this is where member states thought that we need to have a specific annex on transit, and this is where it is on Annex 8 of the agreement. Madame Demitta had already mentioned a number of initiatives in terms of trade facilitation under the AfCFTA. She mentioned about the tariff liberalization and rules of origin. For my presentation, I'm just mentioning a little bit what we had been doing under the auspices of the African Union Subcommittee of Directors General of Customs, which is made up of Directors General of Customs since 2018. This is where in Kigali we had a remarkable amount of countries signing the AfCFTA agreement. So to kind of mark that landmark event of signing, the Directors Generals had their main theme of their meeting in 2018, combating corruption in customs to effectively implement the AfCFTA. That was also in line with the AU theme for 2018, which was combating corruption in Africa. Then immediately in 2019, where we observed the entry into force of the AfCFTA, the Subcommittee of Directors General of Customs, again with the main theme, discussed about the entry into force of the AfCFTA. What are the implications for customs administrations? As Madame Demitta had already mentioned earlier on, 85, maybe 85 or even more of 85% of the implementation actually rests on customs administrations. So definitely we have a very, very critical and important role to play in terms of customs administration to ensure that this agreement is effective and successful. One of the key decisions and or recommendations at that meeting in 2019, which was in Kampala, was that the African Union should develop programs and activities to build the capacity of customs administration with a view to ensure successful implementation. And this is where we joined hands with the GIZ and the WCO RPSG ESA region, where we did a needs assessment, which was conducted since last year, to identify the challenges of customs administrations, the needs and challenges for customs administration to effectively implement the AfCFTA. And with that, a customs leadership module has also been developed accordingly to address the above, meaning to address the needs and challenges of customs administration. I can definitely, here I can mention the only limitation that we had is that we didn't touch the private sector. Now maybe going forward, the AfCFTA Secretariat can do something more comprehensive by taking into consideration the needs and challenges of the private sector and do a similar needs assessment and a leadership module. And here I want to thank the consultant, Mr. Mark Woodger, whom you're very familiar with, Juanita, and because Mr. Mark is from this region, from the ESA region, more specifically from Cape Town, Southern Africa, we have a number of projects that we did together since my time in SADC and then even at the AUC level. So we thank the consultant for this research and project. These two documentation, which is the needs assessment report and the customs leadership module, definitely forms a solid foundation of for maybe a comprehensive capacity building program for customs administration and only for the private sector. So this is something maybe that can be a takeover for the AfCFTA Secretariat and the private sector. The two documents are already practically finalized, but it's a little bit of fine-tuning that we remain to do, after which we will happily share the two documentation with the AfCFTA Secretariat and to everyone, but more importantly to the AfCFTA Secretariat for follow-up, and also, like I said, maybe that can form a basis for a more comprehensive capacity building program. Now let me come to boosting intra-Africa trade. Like mentioned, in 2012, this is the second major project that AU heads of the state had embarked on, the boosting intra-African trade, definitely taking into consideration the very few percentage of intra-African trade, which remains very low. Every year we have been singing the same song, it is being low, but now we can see concrete steps toward trying to improve the situation. Boosting intra-African trade had been already there, but then now we have a new environment, we have a new project, the AfCFTA. In short, the BIAT program has 7 clusters, including trade policy, productive capacity, trade-related infrastructure, trade finance, trade information, and factor market integration. All these clusters are not only dealt by one department, but there are several departments that deal with, and I'm not going to touch everything, but under trade facilitation, one of the immediate force in action at that time was simplification and harmonization of customs procedures, customs and transit procedures. We also had border management issues and interconnectivity issues. Under trade information, this is something which could be very important and very interesting for you to note down. Juanita, you will remember at a point in time you were talking to me about maybe the possibility of developing or having or establishing trade portals from a regional perspective. We all know that in line with the WTO article on publication of information, quite a large number of countries, especially in this region, ESA region, have already developed trade information portals. For instance, Seychelles, Mauritius, Lesotho, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and so on. And then we also hear that there is kind of some initiative attempts, I would say, from regional level to kind of develop regional portals, trade portals. At the level of the African Union, this is where we embarked in an African Trade Observatory. What is that? The main functions for that trade observatory will be firstly to collect trade and trade-related qualitative and quantitative data and information from member states, but for member states also. Definitely, we just can't be collecting them and then we don't do anything with that. So this is where we need to utilize, make the maximum use of this information and data. Monitor and evaluate the implementation process of the AfCFTA, establish database for African trade that is used to publish and disseminate information. So the dashboard of this observatory was launched by the chairperson, His Excellency Musa Faki, and also Dr. Gonzalez from the ITC and the European Commissioner. That was in 2019 during the 12th Extraordinary Summit. So that is also very important for you to note. We are also developing, in the process of developing an African continental e-commerce strategy. I will happily share it with you. Suffice to say that the strategy recommends the implementation of WCO's 15th LMS standards, which includes simplified clearance procedures, risk management, EDI, interagency cooperation and cooperation, public-private partnership, AEO concepts, de minimis, models of revenue collection, and definitely customs control should also be in the forefront. That's why we have prevention of frauds and illicit trade. So you can go through the PowerPoint to get some more information on the importance of e-commerce, especially at this stage of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have been developing an AU trade facilitation strategy since 2018. This was also adopted by the Subcommittee of Directors General in 2018. It has a number of components, including simplification and harmonization of trade documentation and customs procedures, ICT, security, NTBs, transport system, and we have not forgotten the SMEs. This strategy was adopted by the Subcommittee of Directors Generals, and it was also presented to the STC, which is a ministerial meeting in 2019. But the STC was of the opinion that it has also to be considered by a joint committee of the Directors General and the Subcommittee on Trade Facilitation, Custom Cooperation and Transit at the level of the AfCFTA. So definitely, this is not kind of something new. Everything that is in the strategy, all the clusters, all the components are just kind of a compressed compendium of best practices, international best practices, and conventions and instruments on trade facilitation. You can look at this slide, which is very scary and dreadful. I couldn't stop without talking about the coronavirus and what we are doing about the coronavirus. So currently, in collaboration with the AUDA, NEPAD, and UNECA, we are developing an AU guideline on COVID-19. This is not something new. We have heard about it because this is based on work that has already been done in different ranks. For instance, COMESA, ESC, and SADC, they have already developed similar guidelines, and even the tripartite developed it. But this one is wider in the coverage, meaning it is at continental level, and the scope is also wider because it touches movement of persons and also services, whereas the others may be touching only goods, but this one goes beyond goods. The guideline has a number of trade facilitation and customs related articles to facilitate the movement of goods, not only essential goods on this stage of the pandemic, but also general goods. It also takes into account the WCO RPSG Revised Petroleum Convention specific Annex J on relief consignment. The guideline is practically finalized, and it will be presented again to the ministerial meeting, the STC, in July 2021 for adoption. I'm not going to go through the objective of the guidelines, but we will be definitely happy to share with you the whole guideline for your information, definitely because it will be important for you to know also what is happening and also to put it into practice maybe. Dr. Juanita, you know, me being from an Indian origin, and I like the spices. And while trying to develop to this presentation, to work on this presentation, I said to myself, let me put some spices to it, because we are talking about the main theme of this meeting is the AfCFTA, and it is for a specific group, which is a regional private sector group. So you see the negotiations part and the establishment of the AfCFTA has mainly been done by the government officials or by the government, but the real thing is that the AfCFTA will only be successful and effective if the private sector is not only be able to trade, but trade successfully, meaning that they have to make profits out of the trade used under the AfCFTA. So this is where I bring some critical reflections and questions maybe to this RPSG going forward. These are the questions, maybe homework for you, Dr. Juanita and Larry Lisa, to develop maybe some work programs and so on. So my question, definitely, we don't need answers over here. Like I said, these are just reflections. I would ask, is the private sector sufficiently conversant with the AfCFTA? When I'm talking about the private sector, I'm talking about the whole private sector, not only the group that you are, because maybe someone somewhere is not even aware that we have something like this in a remote region, but the private sector is a private sector, and specifically the SMEs. So for me, globally, is the private sector sufficiently conversant? How much is the private sector involved in the implementation of the agreement at a continental level, at the regional level, and a national level? So will it be only like, for instance, subcommittees involving the government officials? So my question is how the private sector is involved, how much they are involved. Then is the private sector adequately represented in the institutional mechanism responsible for the implementation? Again, these two are a bit definitely, they touch each other. Then is the private sector adequately capacitated in terms of tools, expertise, knowledge, and experience when we talk about the AfCFTA? So definitely, finally, the last question, which englobes everything, is the private sector ready to take a long drive? I mentioned here long drive, not a short drive, a long drive in the AfCFTA journey. So these are the reflections I will bring to this, definitely to this group and this meeting. Of course, we are not looking for answers immediately. These are reflections. So with this, I would thank everyone to listen to my presentations. And I will definitely make an appeal here. Each and every one, we still need to fight this common enemy, which is the coronavirus. We have a strong role to play, and this thing is not going to leave us very soon. I don't know why this thing likes us very much, but let's hope we can eradicate this, this pandemic as soon as possible. I thank you.
Thank you, Kassee. I'm not sure if the people know, and maybe the colleagues know, but you are the author of many articles been written over the years. So you have in your mind the teacher and you give us some homework. I think we definitely would like to take it on board and do some homework. And thank you very much. Very enlightful.
Thank you, Juanita. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure listening to you. So with that, we're going to move to Alice and Balness. And as we said, it's the noble and the exalted absolute truth in terms of digital trade and 4IR. So I'm going to hand over to Alice and Balness. Thank you. Balness. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Greetings from COMESA, the chairperson of the WCO ESA Regional Private Sector Group, the WCO ESA Director, Mr. Lareriza, and all representatives from the REX. I'll be talking about digital trade and the fourth industrial revolution. So give me a minute to share my screen.
It's coming through, Balness. Yes, we can see. You just need to put in presentation mode if you want slide mode, but we can see that clearly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the feedback, but I'll skip some of the slides because some of the things have already been tackled.
Perfect.
So I will straight away talk about COMESA's participation in the AfCFTA. So what is COMESA? COMESA is a regional economic community comprising 21 African states. And the current strategy for COMESA can be summed up as economic prosperity through regional integration. So COMESA's participation in the AfCFTA is in two folds. One, as a REC, and two, at member states level. COMESA is one of the building blocks of the African Continental Free Trade Area. So COMESA participates in the negotiations as well as the development of policy and legal instruments. So now I'll start talking about digital trade. I will talk about the various digital trade instruments, some of which are also being implemented at the continental level. So the first digital trade instrument I'll talk about is the non-tariff barriers online reporting, monitoring, and elimination mechanism. So what you're seeing on the screen is the link to the online NTB and reporting tool. So we have the same mechanism at the continental level. The link is also shared. So what is this online reporting tool? It is just a web-based tool whereby the private sector or anyone can report complaints with regard to trade barriers. When someone reports a complaint on the NTB's online reporting tool, this complaint goes straight to nominated government officials who are called national focal points. So the national focal points, they work in collaboration with focal points at the REC level, which is COMESA, ESA, and SADC. And they ensure that the complaint has to be resolved in a timely manner. As of to date, 728 reported complaints have been resolved, but still some are still being reported. There's also a mobile version of the NTB reporting mechanism. So COMESA is piloting this mobile version. The launch of the pilot was done in 2019. The target group for this mobile version, it's mostly the small scale cross-border traders who might not have access to the internet. Another digital tool being implemented by COMESA is the Regional Customs Transit Guarantee Scheme, CANE. Under this scheme, goods pass through various countries using one customs bond. This is a component of the Transit Trade and Transit Facilitation, Annex 1 of the COMESA Treaty. For now, there are only 4 countries that are implementing the scheme. The RCT agreement was signed and ratified by 13 countries, but as I've said, it's only a few countries that are implementing this scheme. So what is a CANE? A CANE is a guarantee document that is used throughout the transit process as a proof of a valid guarantee or bond and undertaking that customs obligations have been complied with for each and every transit country. So the COMESA RCTG is the second of its kind in the world after the European Transport International Route years, and it happens to be the only one in the region. In 2020, the new version of the RCTG was launched. This is a mobile application. So through this mobile application, clearing and forwarding agents, they are able to view their bond balance as well as to see active CANE. Now, what is the benefit of using the Regional Customs Transit Guarantee Scheme? The benefit is to reduce the cost of guarantee. That is to say, instead of entering into bonds at each and every transit country, we just have one bond guarantee for all the countries from the country of export up to the final destination. Now, there is going to be a similar arrangement at the continental level that will be called AfRIEM Bank, African Collaborative Transit Guarantee Scheme. And just like the COMESA RCTG, this program has been designed to facilitate the smooth transit of goods. And COMESA signed an agreement with AfRIEM Bank, that was in March 2021. So under this continental program, the AfRIEM will become the regional as well as continental guarantor for the goods passing through the various borders of Africa. Another digital tool being implemented by COMESA is the COMESA Virtual Trade Facilitation System. Under this system, cargo is being tracked using electronic seals. This is an online system, and through this system, other COMESA trade facilitation instruments can also be interfaced. For example, the RCTG, the yellow card, which is a third-party insurance. And the CVTFS has its own advantages in the sense that if you are able to track the goods, you are secured, and then you see that the goods have arrived at their destiny. It's also a security in terms of customs revenue. So that's all the electronic seals that are armed to conveyance carrying goods. Another tool which is being implemented by COMESA, this is very important, especially that now there is COVID. It's called the COMESA COVID-19 online platform. I've also shared the link to this platform. So the aim of this platform was for companies to share information regarding the availability of goods and services, especially essential goods which are important in the prevention of the COVID-19 pandemic. So as of June 2021, 24 companies or associations had registered on the COVID-19 online platform. So under the platform, member states, that is the government, they are required to post important trade information regarding the essential goods, while the private sector, which are the companies, they are required to upload their products. So this is a good platform because that's where the sellers as well as buyers can network. So the information on the platform can be either for public access or else it can be restricted, that is by using a password. So through this online system, vendors, they are able to put up their payment options, and they also put their contact details. So the buyer and the seller, they are able to conclude their trade transaction later on after they get into contact with each other. And there is also an option whereby vendors on shipping, they will be able to advise the available modes of shipping. Now I'll talk about the fourth industrial revolution. So what is meant by the fourth industrial revolution? In simple terms, this is a type of revolution which is being characterized by a combination of digital, biological, as well as physical fears of an economy. Examples of the types of the new technologies under the fourth industrial revolution are 3D printing and cloud computing. So with regards to trade, there is a trade tech. And what is the meaning of trade tech? Trade tech simply refers to a set of technologies and inventions that enable trade to be more efficient, inclusive, and equitable. So trade tech is the fundamental as it harnesses the fourth industrial revolution. So the fourth industrial revolution is very important at the same time as countries are working on facilitating international trade. So the World Economic Forum, they did a survey on the most transformative technologies of trade. So the first thing that they found was Internet of Things, followed by digital payments, and the third was on e-commerce platforms. I will not go through the whole list. I've just shared with you three most transformative technologies for trade. And what is the impact of technologies on trade? The most impact is a lowering of trade costs as well as a reduction of time, seconded by trade in new products or services. And on the third place is the positive environmental outcomes. So what are the challenges that are being faced with regards to adoption of trade tech? I'll just give you three of them. The first one is the cost of the technology. Most of these new upcoming technologies, they tend to be too expensive or prohibitive. And there's also lack of human capital or skills. And on the third place, there's not a strong trade tech ecosystem on the local market. Now, as a way forward, at COMESA level, COMESA is in the process of implementing the digital FTA. So when we say the digital FTA, it's all about empowering cross-border traders to do cross-border trade using ICT as a tool to minimize physical barriers. So under the digital FTA, there are three segments, namely e-trade, e-logistics, and e-legislation. Under e-trade, the example that is there as an instrument is the COMESA online market, which is being developed. Under e-logistics, we'll have the electronic certificate of origin, which will soon be piloted in some countries. Under e-registration, COMESA is in the process of developing a trade portal. Now, as a conclusion, I would suggest that the implementation of the AfCFTA should maximize on digitalization as well as use of emerging technologies, just as a means to reduce time and cost of doing business in Africa. I thank you all for paying attention. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you, Balness. I think we appreciate your presentation, your honesty, and how you package the mobile application, then the online, and then come back to the way forward. I think that's very encouraging. I just want to encourage the colleagues, my colleagues, you can send the questions through. We probably will not have time to answer all the questions, but you have our commitment that we will put the questions onto the WCO ESA Regional Private Sector Group website, and we will make sure that we get the answers from all the experts that's on the panel list. So please, I encourage you to do the questions. Thank you, Balness. Maybe if you can stop sharing the screen, then we can move on to Stephen. Thank you very much. So the next one is Stephen, and he's going to talk to us on the non-tariff barriers, and maybe just to remember the meaning of his name is Crown. So Stephen, over to you. Thank you very much.
I'm the chairperson of the WCO ESA Private Sector, the director of WCO ROCB, representative of AU, my friend Kassee, and representative of other RECs. Good afternoon. I am going to talk about the issue of non-tariff barriers as we deal with them in the EAC, more to look at how the situation is, understanding it, so that as we move to the continental level, there is a degree of reassurance that we have the experience to rely on in terms of handling the challenges we may face at that level. I'm trying to put this on slide mode. Just a minute.
Stephen, if I maybe can help you, just before the icon of the voice plus and a minus, there's the icon of slide mode.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yes, perfect. Yes,
yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And
it's clear and we can see it very nicely, so you can continue.
You are seeing it clearly?
Yes, we see it clearly in presentation mode, so you can continue.
Okay, thank you. The EAC has a long history with regard to integration. This started way back in 1917, but I want to go straight to the issue of the customs union. We had the first EAC, which collapsed in 1977 from 1967. But in 2005, we had the customs union being established again. And as it is today, the member partner states are Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and South Sudan, 6 countries. And the objective of the customs union are further liberalization of inter-regional trade in goods, promotion of efficiency in production within the community, enhancement of domestic cross-border and foreign investment in the community, promotion of economic development and diversification in industrialization in the community, and deepening and widening political, social, and economic cooperation. On this, I would want to focus on the first objective of liberalization of intra-regional trade in goods. In order for us to move forward in a customs union, the critical thing was to remove the tariffs, internal tariffs that were being implemented against each other within the ESC region by each country. That was important. But then, as it has been mentioned by the COMESA presenter, immediately you do away with the tariffs, you start seeing non-tariff barriers coming up. Okay? You start having non-tariff barriers coming up. And I think to the private sector, this is something that they confront every day. So at this stage, it's important for us to appreciate what are non-tariff barriers. The non-tariff barriers refers to restrictions that result from prohibitions, conditions, or specific market requirements that make importation or exportation of products difficult or costly. It is also the unjustified or improper application of non-tariff measures, which are supposed to be put in place, but if not applied properly, they become a hindrance to trade. This is such as the sanitary and phytosanitary measures, plus other technical barriers to trade. These may also arise from different measures taken by governments and authorities in form of laws, regulations, policies, conditions, restrictions, or specific requirements, and even the private sector business practices and the prohibition that are aimed at protecting the domestic industries. So when we're talking about the non-tariff barriers, we should understand from whoever is implementing them, they may appear to be legitimate. They may appear to be okay. But to those ones who are impacted by the non-tariff barriers, they see it as a hindrance to trade, and it makes trade very, very costly. Within the ESC, how do we address the non-tariff barriers? Because we recognize that this is a challenge. The immediate thing that ESC looked at as a solution was to come up with a Non-Tariff Barriers Act that was enacted in 2017. Okay, and the objective of this act is to enhance and facilitate trade in goods within the ESC through the removal of conditions which affect and distort trade, and the creation of an environment that is conducive to trade and effective movement of goods, and the removal of restrictions which make imports and exports difficult or costly. What we should appreciate here is the existence of a legal framework. The problem is there, but it has not just been left to thrive. A legal framework has been put in place to try to address NTPs. It requires partner states to remove, to review Can you hear me? Okay, to review their trade practices, customs procedures,
Stephen, maybe if I can interrupt, maybe if you can take off your video because we want to hear you, but sometimes there's a lag. So maybe if you just for now, for the presentation, just switch off your video and then we can hear you very clear. Thank you.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you very much, and we can hear you clear. Thank you.
Okay. So as I was saying, we have a legal framework that demands that partner states review their trade practices, custom practices, and other measures in place to remove existing NTPs. It also establishes national monitoring committees and national focal points to support the elimination of NTPs. The Act also provides for mechanisms to eliminate NTPs, specifically 3 of them. 1, mutual agreement between partner states that are affected by a particular NTP, implementation of the ESC time-bound program for elimination of NTPs, which my colleague from COMESA has already mentioned because it's the same framework we are implementing, and also the regulations, directives, or recommendations of the Council of Ministers. However, in case a dispute is not resolved, the aggrieved party may petition the ESC Court of Justice. Let me come to the time-bound program, which is a very, very critical tool in trying to address and manage the process of elimination of NTPs. The objective of the time-bound program is to identify, report, monitor, and eliminate NTPs in a timely manner. The NTPs are reported online via the COMESA ESC SAAFF tripartite NTPs reporting, monitoring, and elimination mechanism. The NTPs are reported by the private sector, the business community, and by the partner states focal persons on NTPs. Okay, this has proved to be a very effective tool with regard to monitoring, reporting, monitoring, and eliminating NTPs. What then, which will be of very much interest to private sector, what then are the categories of NTPs? We have got the involvement of government participation and restrictive practices, e.g. on export subsidies, monopolies, etc. Customs and administrative entry procedures, e.g. arbitrary customs classifications, misinterpretation of rules of origin, etc. Technical barriers to trade, TBT, including technical regulations, inspections, testing, and certification procedures, packaging, marking, and labeling requirements. All these, in the way they are done, would end up creating NTPs against the next player. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures, such as limits of the pesticide residues, heavy metals, restricted pests and disease, put in place to protect the health of humans, plants, and animals. As you can see, the intention is good. But now, when it comes to application, or they are poorly applied, that is where we have problems. NTPs coming up. Specific limitations, remedies, like quantitative restrictions, export taxes, quotas, charge on imports, prior import deposits and subsidies, administrative fees, duties, etc. Others include arbitrariness, discrimination, okay? The cost of things and unclear procedures. When you reach the border and you are not clear of the procedures that you are supposed to undergo, that ends up being an NTP because it prevents you from executing your trade in the quickest manner and less costly. But why NDPs? You find that those imposing things that end up being NDPs always justify them in terms of safeguarding health, safety, and security of human beings, animals, and plants, and against environmental pollution. They also say it is to protect home industries and consumers, is to safeguard national security, and is to safeguard against revenue loss. As I said, whoever is implementing sees it to be legitimate, sees it to be okay. NDPs occur mainly due to not granting preferential tariff treatments to goods originating from the ESA partner states. This is where we have a problem. Implementing domestic laws, regulations, and administrative measures contrary to the community laws and protocols. Lack of harmonization of standards and conformity assessment procedures, that is testing, inspections, and certification. Lack of transparency in the development and implementation of measures with a likely effect to trade. What is the status of NDPs in the ESC currently? As at May, we have got 1 new NDP. We have 5 NDPs which were resolved between the period November 2020 to May, which have remained outstanding, and we have 226. We have 226 NDPs that were resolved cumulatively since 2007. Let me now maybe talk about the success story. Why is it that ESC has made progress in handling NDPs? One is putting in place institutional, legal, and policy frameworks to fight NDPs. Secondly is the existence of national monitoring committees on elimination of identified NDPs. Then we have regional monitoring committee on elimination of NDPs. And then we have got the process of resolving NDPs through ESC policy meeting, such as the Secretariat Council on Trade, the Committee on Customs, and the East African Standards Committee. All these units help to solve the problems relating to non-tariff barriers. Again, the ESC Customs Union Protocol provides that partner states should remove existing NDPs and refrain from imposing from new one. So this is a binding, and they have signed the protocol. So you have a way of telling them you are not supposed to do this when you meet to resolve any NDP that may have come up. We have the NDP Act being implemented with its regulations. We have bilateral meetings between partner states, and we have the Court of Justice, which in the real sense has resolved some NDPs in the region. Then we have got harmonization of standards for the commonly traded goods and conformity assessment procedure. These interventions have helped to try to address this challenge of eliminating non-tariff barriers. The experience of ESC is useful when we move to the larger body, the African Continental Free Trade, because it's telling us that we need to put a time-bound program in place. The experience is there within the COMESA ESC SADC region. We can borrow from it and implement it at the continental level. It is working. But let me haste to say, NDPs come up almost every day. Because if you do something that the other person does not see to be facilitating his side of the trade, it will end up in this report in the time bond program as an NTB. The other thing that we can borrow is the legal framework, putting in place legal instruments. It will help. And the commitment of nation states at the continental level to do away with non-tariff barriers. Those are some of the lessons that we can learn from the experience within the East African community. Thank you, Chairperson. I submit.
Thank you, Stephen. Very enlightful, and we really like the presentation, the technical background that you were giving us, the success story, and the right. And thank you very much. Colleagues, if you agree with me, I think we're not going to have a quick comfort break because we're over our time. And I think we want to listen to Maggie and Alcides, and then for Larry to close. So if you allow me, can we continue with Maggie? I know you muted and you can't tell us, but for the sake of making sure that we stay in our time, Stephen, maybe if you can stop sharing your screen, then we will allow Maggie to take over. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and you get lots of thanks on the chat. So we'll hand over to Maggie. Paul of Paul, what's the name? Paul, gift of God. Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you very much, Juanita. And can I just ask if you can see my presentation?
Yes, we can see. It's just not in presentation mode. So maybe if you click at the bottom of your screen to put it in presentation.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, it's now in presentation mode. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank Juanita, our director today of the ceremony, for inviting us as SACU, to the director of the WCO ESA ROCB, Larry Lisa, who I've known for years. Thank you so much for inviting us, and all protocol is observed for everyone that is in attendance. In the interest of time, I'll just go straight into our presentation. The request was that I should present on COVID-19 pandemic and the lessons for the AfCFTA. So I'll get on with it. But before I do so, I just want to highlight that in the interest of those that do not know SACU, we are made up of 5 countries, which is Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, and South Africa. And our main priorities and focus are on regional industrial development, review of the revenue sharing, trade facilitation, development of SACU institutions, unified engagement in trade agreements. As you know, SACU, we negotiate trade agreements, collectively as a SACU region. Even the AfCFTA, we have negotiated and are continuing to negotiate as SACU. And also trade in services amongst one of the key priorities for our organization. In terms of lessons learned on COVID pandemic, really from where I sit, the major lessons that we've learned are the fact that disruptions are inevitable. They are constant and they're a part of humanity. And we have seen through this COVID-19 pandemic how exposed and vulnerable we became as humanity on Earth. At least in my time, I haven't been there when Spanish flu was there, but in our time, we witnessed just this vulnerability and shocks, due to the fact that we are interconnected. We are interconnected as a human, as humans, and the shocks really we felt were health, economics, and social. And of course, this resulted in limited human mobility, stricter measures, to contain the COVID-19 pandemic. We've seen it all. So I'll turn on now to what that actually did for trade, it caused major stress, and it was a major stress test for the world of trade. And we've seen governments around the world imposing around 2,031 policy intervention measures, according to the Global Trade Alert report. And we've seen market access restrictions, imposed in the bid to really now contain this COVID-19 pandemic. And this really, limited quite a lot of commercial activities. We've seen how it affected the economies around the world. I won't go much into that in the interest of time. And in total, really, from this report, Global Trade Alert report, we've seen that 106 nations have implemented a total of 240 reforms in order to ease the importation of medical goods and, of course, medicine in general. And we would understand that during this period from last year, when restrictions were implemented across the world, movement was mainly in most countries limited to essential goods, which will then include medical supplies that were intended for COVID-19 pandemic. And another lesson that came through is the fact that trade facilitation became more important to expedite clearance of essential goods, including COVID-19 goods, to implement special procedures to expedite medical equipment, supplies, and pharmaceuticals. And also, in most cases or some cases, these movements were now expedited and accredited to become authorized operators, whom under normal circumstances were not necessarily accredited. But as customs, we had to learn to quickly ramp up the processes and ensure that we accredit these types of movements, or rather companies and businesses that were moving essential goods and medical supplies. And then we've seen also the need for pre-arrival processing, which really included also acceptance of electronic submissions of documents, simplifying import and export forms procedures, and also implementation of green lanes, and of course the guidelines to protect the health and ensuring availability of goods and essential services. So especially now part of the world, which is in SACU, we have seen quite a lot of green lanes implemented, meaning these cross-border transporters were given a green lane. Yes, we had some teething problems there and there, but those were eventually were expedited in terms of resolution. In the SACU region, really our response to COVID-19 has been quite a good one. Initially, we struggled just like anywhere else in the world, because we were trying to get, to understand the pandemic, but also what type of measures we need to put in place to be able to continue to operate. So what happened really at a regional level and nationally, we strengthened as a region. We strengthened bilateral and regional cooperation and collaboration to expedite response. And also the other major issue that we did was to optimize customs processes for clearance of export and import goods within the region, and the use of green lanes, as I've already indicated. And we trained a lot of customs officials continually on COVID-19 regulations and applications thereof. And also there was also a huge, a huge task that was taken to implement business continuity plans across the region. And of course, strengthening messaging and communication. Over and above, lately what we've also done as SACU to now contribute over and above the pandemic, to contribute to the AfCFTA implementation, is the fact that we've revised our work program to focus on industrialization. And within that work program, a trade facilitation program is also seen as a flagship program that will drive industrialization for this sub-region, which is SACU. So within this revised trade facilitation program, we're focusing on customs modernization, a program which is our flagship program for SACU revenue administrations to be able to work on efficiencies and ensure that they serve traders much better. And we're also looking at administration of trade agreements to support negotiations and implementation of trade agreements that we sign with third parties, including the AfCFTA. As you would know, we also signed other trade agreements such as EFTA, SAAFF, and also within a configuration of SADC, which is SADC-EPA, which is really 5 SACU countries plus Mozambique. So we do support implementation of those agreements to make sure that we create a conducive environment for trade to move unhindered, but also access to market for traders as well. And we also focus on border coordination. This is very important for to ensure efficiencies and for goods to move with ease, for all the stakeholders that are operating at the borders to collaborate and also share information to be able to facilitate trade with ease. And the behind the border measures there, we are looking at issues of standards, collaborating on that within the country and also cross country among SACU member states. Another issue or the last point is transport and logistics. This is a new area that we are still unpacking at a regional level under the new revised SACU trade facilitation program. And there really the target is to be able to efficiently, rehabilitate the roads, be able to capitalize on the use of new technologies, to be able to address soft infrastructure issues as well. So we will be working with different types of stakeholders, particularly on transport and logistics, including the tripartite, as they have done quite a lot of work in this area. And of course, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of a flagship program that we are running currently to create an efficient environment for trade to move unhindered. So we have prioritized IT connectivity, so the use and maximum use of IT. And so far, all our countries, the 5, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, they're connected to South Africa. So their customs management systems are connected to South Africa, and they are working to also interconnect amongst themselves as well. And we have started undertaking data matching on exports transactions, just so that these are done in an automated manner, meaning that there won't be any human intervention in the future once it's fully implemented. So we have run about between 70 and just below 50% of data matching under IT connectivity. And for the AEO program is really intended for the traders. It's an authorized economic operator program. Currently, we are still implementing a compliance leg of the program, and all our countries have established this AEO compliance program. And in total, we have 151 authorized economic operators that are accredited under this program. And all other segments of the program really is just to support the two, which is IT connectivity and AEO program. AEO program is the one that is really, we are targeting traders with this one, where, I just wanted to also zoom into it to indicate that it's a compliance management program. And the traders that are actually participating in it, they do benefit from, customized or even simplified customs procedures. They will have, they will save costs in terms of administrative burden. And also, of course, they benefit from the structured dialogue with with customs in certain instances, because it's still implemented at national level. Traders also benefit from having a relationship manager, to manage their transactions as they move cross border, which really, I think it's a very good benefit. So benefits are extensive. I won't mention all of them here. And also I wanted to just indicate the fact that we are working on a future regional AEO program, which will target also compliance plus security. And this is how we envisage it to look like. So we will have really, it will include a minimum criteria across the border, meaning that once you're accredited in one country, you don't have to be accredited in the other. You can have what we call mutual recognition, so that when you move your cargo across the board, you don't have to, in fact, the benefits are extended to you automatically. So this is what we are working on. And of course, we are looking to the fact that the SACU regional AEO program will reduce border intervention and strengthen interagency collaboration. And we will, of course, it will be anchored on regional mutual recognition. And in the future, we will look at global recognition, meaning that if a trader is accredited in the SACU region, they can be recognized once we enter into mutual recognition with other partners, outside of the SACU region. And of course, we're looking to incorporate e-commerce into this regional AEO program. And we are looking really to having tangible, meaningful, and transparent and measurable outcome from this program, particularly the benefits for traders. And we are working closely with traders on this one to make sure that whatever we develop really speaks to the pain points they are actually currently experiencing. And in terms of lessons for the AfCFTA, I've just put really a few. Colleagues have already mentioned some of them. I won't go into detail in the interest of time. The one that I would like to just highlight is the fact that we need to really rehabilitate infrastructure and logistics in the continent, so that really we can simplify cross-border movement of goods. We need to develop and implement, where possible, intra-Africa trade, operational resilience, continuity, sustainability, as well as, so that we can really become resilient when we have disasters, pandemics, trade wars, and any other unforeseen events. And we need to work towards eradicating thick borders, really, and adopt smart border concept, but not only on paper, and really implement it on the ground. And there's need to mobilize investment in trade, in trade and customs reforms to eradicate paper-based legacy systems and to leapfrog to emerging technologies like my colleagues have already mentioned. Technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain technology, Internet of Things, and 3D printing. We need to start really acclimatizing around those, get upskilling from those that are in the know in this area, and really building stronger partnerships and collaboration between private sector, public sector, as well as civil society. And last but not least, really identify quick wins to simplify cross-border movement of goods, so that we can really, in real terms, promote intra-Africa trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my sister and friend Magitladi. We now invite Alcides Monteiro from SADC to tell us what the future will be like with the AfCFTA. Alcides, please come. And Maggie, once again, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
And yeah, we beg your indulgence for about 10 more minutes as Alcides finalizes. Alcides, please come in and start us off.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to recognize the first Juanita, good afternoon. Director of Ceremony, Mr. Larry Lisa, my partner in crime, WCO ESA Regional Private Sector Group, the Chairperson, African Union, Kassee has already presented something, my partner in crime as well. My sister Rex, Balness, Analo, and the others. Good afternoon. It's a big challenge to present this topic, which I have to present on the future. What will look like the future of African Continental FTA. Let me to share my screen. This is my presentation. I see everyone is eager to see the African Union, African Continental FTA. Of course, there are lessons learned as a basis for us to implement African Continental FTA and achieve what we intend to achieve. Of course, there should be a paradigm shift in terms of how we implement, and also in terms of the commitment, not on paper, but on action. That is most important for us to achieve. The first things, when you want to achieve something, you have to plan it properly. And so far, we have planned it properly to come up with the Continental FTA. Our plans are smart. As coming from SADC, it's fair to start to introduce a little bit SADC, what is SADC all about, but it is a briefie. This slide summary gives a summary of SADC, which is made up by 16 member states, in which 13 are participating in the SADC FTA. Very soon we will have 14 because Angola is just submitted the offer in order to participate in the FTA. In terms of geographical locations, we have the coastal member states, land-linked member states, and we have also highlands member states, which means that we have to implement we have to implement properly the debt facilitation instrument in order to have our FTA well implemented. We start to implement the SADC FTA. It was in 2008. So far, we have achieved, we have tangible results in terms of the implementation of this instrument. Trade have grown, but we still have more to do for us in order to have it, to achieve what we intended to achieve initially. SADC, the Constitutional Act of SADC, which we call the treaty, and also we have the protocols, which the protocols are sector specific. On the treaty, the treaty talks of Lagos Plan of Actions of 1980, which establishing the African Economic Community and the Constitutive Act of African Union. Our protocol on trade also talks of provisions of Abuja Treaty. We're calling for the establishment of regional and sub-regional economic groups and also the DEX as a building blocks for the African Economic Community. I have to say that SADC is one of the 8 DEX recognized by African Union. And as such, that's why in our provisions, in our constitution of SADC and the protocol talks of these instruments which guide the African Union. We take that the continental FTA is the implementation of this instrument which are implemented, Abuja Treaty, and also the implementation of the Lagos plans. I have to say what the leaders always believe, which is the aspirations. The head of states and government of Africa, they always mention of Africa we want. This is aspiration, and it shows the political will, which we want to see Africa somewhere in the in the globe, in terms of be united and in terms of participating equal with the other configurations, other X or other blocks in the world. The extraordinary session of the Assembly in Kigali on 21st March 2011 entered into force the agreement which established the continental FTA. The continental FTA in this case, what is intended here is to have a situation where the 55, if we accept we are 55 member states, they participating in these configurations. So far, after the signing of the agreement, after the agreement was adopted, there were 54 member states which have signed, but then there were 30 which have been ratified, and there are others which are still preparing for ratify and deposit their instruments to implement the continental FTA. Which I say that the principle of us to have the FTA well implemented is a commitment, and for the commitment implies paradigm shift, and we have also to have to our mindset changed so that to do differently in terms of how we are doing under Rex. All the lesson learned from Rex should be now improved, be an instrument to improve how we will conduct our business in terms of to have the continental FTA well implemented. Under the agreement, there's various protocols and annexes on the various areas on rules of origin, tariff, customs, trade facilitation, transit, SPS, TBT, and the NTBs, trade remedies, and all. As I said, it's not enough for us to have good instruments, but we have also to implement this. In order to have the instrument well implemented and us to have the continental FTA well implemented as well, we need first of all to domesticate all these instruments. Mainly, when it's come to the tariff, we have to have our tariff book included what we have offered under the continental FTA. And also the procedures should be included in the customs code of member states, partner states, state parts, in order to ensure that we now are implementing the instruments. One of the issues which we have noticed over the years was lack of domestications. The excuse of our legislations does not allow. The excuse that it has to go to Parliament first, and there takes time. I think with Continental FTA, awareness was done at all levels, and even the parliamentarians knows the importance of the Continental FTA. That's why we are optimistic in terms of the implementation, and we will achieve good results in implementing this instrument. As a part of the plan has to be accompanied by structures which deals with the implementations. There is a Council of Ministers responsible for trade of African Continental FTA, which oversee the implementation of this instrument at continental level. Under this structure, there is a committee of senior trade officials. And under this, they can have other subcommittees and the technical working groups. If we look at it, basically, the Continental FTA, there are two sectors or big areas. Is trade in goods, which is the first, and we have a trade in service. Coming to trade in goods, we have subcommittees of trade on trade in service, subcommittees on trade in goods, and we have also subcommittees on rules of origin, NTB, trade remedies, TBT tariffs, and the customs and trade facilitation. Those are subcommittees which falls under the trade in goods. Of course, we have other subcommittees which falls under the trade in service. Under the trade in service, you know, as we different from trade in goods, trade in services, there are areas, priority sectors, which so far they were identified the 5 priority sectors in which there are now 4 member states. Probably this is outdated in terms of the numbers of state parties or non-parties who have already submitted their priority sector. For the implementation of the Continental FTA, there's a need to have other areas explored, like investment, where now there is a protocol on investment which is under development. Also, experience coming from the REX, we realized that apart from to remove tariffs, customs duties, and probably NTBs, because although I realized from other presentations indicating that NTBs is something which keep coming, but also there is a lack of diversifications in Africa, which need to be dealt with. The lack of diversifications implies us to embark on the industrialization, which is also part of the African Union agenda, to embark on industrialization. Always where there's trade issues, where member state trade, there are also always disputes. In order to resolve disputes, although first can be amicable, resolve the dispute, but then if member states or partner states or state party don't reach consensus, or then it goes to the dispute settlement board, which now is already in place, the dispute settlement board under the Continental FTA, which will resolve all the disputes which will arise in the process of implementation of the agreement. There will be a second phase of the negotiations of the Continental FTA, which will be more on the areas of investment, competition policy, intellectual property rights, digital trade, and human and youth in trade. Of course, these are the areas which was like a building an agenda, which is included in the second phase of negotiations. The Secretariat is settled and hosted by Ghana in Accra, which is already operating. The process of recruiting officers to fill the position, directors, is underway, and also the process of relocating the officers who are at the unity office, who are in Addis to Accra, is already ongoing. There's a decision for them to go there. Basically, for successful the Continental FTA, there's the need us to look at the instruments, the soft infrastructures, and the hard will. They are already instruments, like the WCO Revised Kyoto Convention, and two instruments, they derive other instruments, or there are other instruments which were generated from these two instruments, even included to some extent the WTO Agreement on Trade Facilitation. It came partly from Revised Kyoto Convention and Safe Framework of Standards. Of course, we need to implement thoroughly the WTO Agreement on Trade Facilitation in order as to have the trade flow in Africa. Apart from the soft infrastructure, which I'm not going to dwell too much on it, we need also to accompany with the hard infrastructures. On the hard infrastructures, there's a program of infrastructure development for Africa, which we call it PIDA, and the kind which deals with infrastructure. Although this the PIDA falls under other, not necessarily under the Secretariat of African Continental FTA, but it is under the auspices of other Directorate commission in the African Union.
Alcides, Juanita, Juanita. I see we busy dropping people from the line, so I don't want to shorten your presentation, but maybe if you come to the punchline, because I can see people dropping off, and we really sincerely apologize for not giving you the full 15 minutes. But if you maybe can wrap up in the next minute, and then Larry can close off, if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay. I need to say that
I wonder also if you can maybe put yourself off from video, because we struggle to hear you.
Vision of as for as a said,
Maybe I'll see this if you maybe I'll see this if you can take yourself off from video as well, because we struggle to hear your sound so clearly. Let's try again. Your communication is not there, so can you hear us, Alcides?
I've improved it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and it sounds better.
Can you hear me? Okay. I was saying, as SADC is one of the recognized legs from African Union, we are also implementing some activities which feeds in the agenda of the Continental FTA. As legs, we have first be organized as a building block for the Continental FTA. In this case, as SADC, we are in the process of consolidating the SADC free trade area. There's various instruments which we are developing in order to consolidate the SADC free trade areas, and also to advance the agenda of the African continental FTA. We have developed our plan, which our plans, they contain 28 activities anchored on 4 clusters: transparency, predictability, simplification, and cooperation. Some of the activities which are there were already presented. My colleagues who anticipated me, they presented their plans on authorized economic operator, transit, risk management, and others, interconnectivity and others, which shows that each DEX, I believe that they are implementing some activities which consolidated the DEX, and those activities will feed into the agenda of the continental FTA. What are the expected benefits for implementing these instruments? They will reduce overall cost due to delays and the informal payment, expediting clearance and release, enable consistency and the predictability applications and the explanation of rules, enable effective and efficient resource deployment, and improving transparency. These are the benefits which will derive from the implementation of the SADC facilitation instrument, which ultimately will contribute to the continental FTA. The SADC Trade Facilitation Program is meant to speed up the consolidation of the SADC FTA. It will advance the implementation of the continental free trade area and tripartite, and is meant to support industrialization and value chain. As I indicated, we need to industrialize in order to see the volume of trade to increase, and it is an enabler for member states to comply with the WCO Revised Kyoto Convention, WTO FTA measures, and also to improve the ease of doing business. This will also ultimately contribute to the market access. This is my presentation. Thank you for the challenges of interconnectivity or my connection. Maybe there's a problem with my connection. Some of the party you didn't hear properly.
Okay, thank you. Please, thank you so much. You may now stop sharing your screen. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our meeting today. In the interest of time, we will leave it at that. We take note of the Alcides. You may stop sharing your presentation. In the interest of time, we will stop at that. We take note of the questions that you have shared. We will respond to them and share each question with every individual. And we shall also share with you the report of the meeting and the outcomes. We take note of some of the suggestions that were made by all the presenters. And on behalf of Juanita, heading the private sector, on behalf of the ESA Vice Chair from Botswana and each and every person, yes, we will share with you the presentations and the report. We say thank you very much. We wish you every blessing under the sun. Stay safe in light of the COVID. God bless you all and keep you.